Congress in 1996, signed by President Clinton, that prevented the federal government from recognizing the validity of same-sex marriages in the states where they're legal. It's a 5-4 decision written by Justice Anthony Kennedy. And the interesting thing here is that the court has said that DOMA is unconstitutional as a matter of equal protection, meaning that it's discriminatory. Now, the importance of that is if the Supreme Court had struck it down on a narrower basis by saying, for example, that the federal government doesn't have the power to determine what a marriage is, that's a matter for the states, that would have been a very narrow ruling. This is a very broad ruling. If the Supreme Court here is saying that the federal government can't make distinctions between same-sex and opposite-sex couples in terms of what marriages the federal government will recognize, then this is an opinion that can be used by proponents of same-sex marriage to attack laws in other states. So it's a significant ruling from the Supreme Court. We're still waiting for the decision on California's Proposition 8. But I would say, based on the size of this ruling and the size of the dissent, that it's going to take the justices a long time to read their opinions from the bench. I would guess that the dissenters will read their dissents as well. So we've got some period of time to wait here before we get the other decision. But
that is NBC's Pete Williams. I interrupted you, Rachel, just as you were saying that we don't know whether this is going to be a momentous day or not. Well, now we do.
Now we know. This is the most, we will have to wait to see the details of it, but on first blush from Pete's reporting, this is the most consequential way they could have chosen to rule in a pro-gay rights way. I defer to the experts here on the panel with us, but this is a very big deal ruling, and this is a very big deal way to decide it.
Kenji, on a very practical matter, what basis, what does this mean?
Well, as a practical matter, it means that if a couple is recognized by their state, a same-sex couple is recognized by their state as married, the federal government will accept that definition. So I think the facts are best illuminated by the woman who was the plaintiff in this case, Edie Windsor. So she was with her partner for 44 years. Actually, after the oral argument, you mentioned the steps of the Supreme Court. They came down the 44 steps of the Supreme Court, and then one of our lawyers said, this is one step for every year this couple has been together. And so that means that, you know, when her wife passed away, they were next of kin in the eyes of New York State, but they were legal strangers in the eyes of the federal government, and she got hit with a $363,000 estate tax that she would not have had to pay if she'd been married to a man.
She would have paid zero if she was married to a man.
That is correct. And so now those kinds of penalties are gone because the federal government must now treat same-sex couples who are married in the eyes of their state the same as opposite-sex couples who are married in the eyes of
Hard to say how huge this is, Jamal, in the sense of we're talking about more than 1,000 laws, regulations that will affect same-sex couples.
It's a much bigger decision than I think a lot of legal experts expected in this case. And as Kenji said, there are real consequences here. So real money we're talking about Social Security benefits. We're talking about VA hospitals. We're talking about burial rights. We're talking about all sorts of laws. And it, as Pete Williams said, it relies on an equal protection principle, which is, I think, further than a lot of people thought. People thought maybe it would be a more narrow ruling, but this might well have implications for cases beyond just DOMA.
Do you think that's true, Richard? You were one of the first people who said, frankly, to the president, to Barack Obama, that he needed to be broader, more forceful on these issues.
Well, it looks like to be a very historic moment. I mean, I'm just seeing the opinion now for the first time, and it's well over 50 pages, so it will take a long time to look at. But, you know, what we had hoped for was a broad ruling based upon equal protection, not any kind of thing around the margins, not any procedural ruling in the DOMA case. And if the court, as it appears it has, said that gays and lesbians are entitled to equal protections of the law and some form of heightened constitutional scrutiny, it will have a big effect not only on couples that are directly affected today, but it'll have a big effect going forward because this case will be able to be used as precedent to strike down any future anti-gay laws in the future. I mean, Barack Obama deserves a lot of credit for this, remember, because it was his Justice Department which came in and switched sides at the in the middle of this case, in the middle of this Windsor case. They had first defended DOMA, then they came in and they switched sides and they said, you know, we've taken a look at this. We too believe this is unconstitutional, and this will be a big day for Barack Obama and a big day for that Justice Department if, in fact, the court rules and supports their position, because this was very unorthodox what they did.
The politics of this are remarkable. Remember, when the Justice Department decided to stop defending this, which was a bold decision on the part of this Justice Department and this administration, it was the House Republicans who stepped in and said, okay, we'll defend it. Okay, we'll defend it. And so it ended up being a very political decision about a very judicial matter. And this validates, I think, what the Justice Department and the Obama administration did, which was going out on a limb when they did it.
And we've been seeing this sea change. In America, first of all, the majority of people now believe in same-sex marriage. A large majority believe that it is inevitable, that it will become the law of the land. And in fact, we've seen just in recent months, Rachel, 3 Republican senators who have changed their position on same-sex marriage.
Yes.
How much do you think, Kenji, that public opinion, which clearly has made leaps and bounds in recent months and certainly in recent years, affected the justices here?
I think it can't help but affect them. So it's kind of a both-and thing. It definitely affects them, but it's always hard to quantify that or put a number on that. So they're not always swayed by public opinion, but they also don't live in a bubble. So I think that the fact that we have 54% of this country and growing, in favor of same-sex marriage at the state level, and then 63% of the country in favor of striking down DOMA, which is what just happened. So I think that people feel that there's an additional insult, right, when a state says that you're married and the federal government won't recognize that, given that there's this long tradition. Even ordinary Americans who are not versed in law or what have you understand that kind of what Justice Ginsburg called skim milk marriage is not a good idea. So today what we've seen with this ruling is that those skim milk marriages are now whole milk marriages.
Chris, what we see, 77 pages of a main opinion and dissent, so it's a lot to get through. But I'm seeing now that the court, Justice Kennedy, seems to have set forth a brand new standard, a careful consideration standard. We've heard running up to this that there are notions of heightened scrutiny and strict scrutiny. Well, there seems to be now what I'm seeing very from a cursory review is a new standard that he's called careful consideration when laws like this are at stake. So it may be that the court today is carving out a brand new standard for sexual orientation discrimination. Again, it's 77 pages. We're going to have to look at it very carefully. But the initial highlights that I'm seeing over the internet about the case seem to suggest that Justice Kennedy is enunciating a brand new standard.
I want to bring in Evan Wolfson, founder and president of Freedom to Marry. This is the only organization that's devoted solely to legalizing gay marriage. Good morning. Thanks for joining us and your reaction.
It's a momentous day for America. It's a momentous day for American families. The court did the right thing today. They got it wrong yesterday, but today was a big one. And what this does is it adds the moral weight of the federal government and in many instances the legal weight of the federal government toward ending the patchwork of discrimination that prevents loving and committed couples in far too many states from sharing in the protections and responsibilities that come with marriage. But what it does mean is those couples who are legally married will now be treated by the federal government as what they are, married. And I look forward to seeing the administration and Congress moving swiftly to implement the Constitution's command as set forth by the court.
It is hard, I think, to understand the breadth of this in many ways. But when you look, as we were talking about, I'm sorry, let's go back to Pete. Not yet. As we look at Edie Windsor's case and we look at the difference between